NATO is seeking to reassure fragile countries in Russia's neighbourhood that Moscow will not undermine their security. Now, this is foreign ministers from the alliance gathered for their final day of talks in Romania's capital of Bucharest. Ministers from Bosnia-Herzegovina, Georgia and Moldova had been present at the meeting today. Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg had identified these countries as among those vulnerable to destabilization by Russia. In the press conference held after the meeting, Mr. Stoltenberg said allies have agreed to step up tailored support for the affected countries, which includes training to improve their security and defence institutions. He adds that the ratification process for NATO membership of Finland and Sweden is nearly complete. China had also been a key matter ministers discussed during the meeting. Mr. Stoltenberg says that while the alliance doesn't see Beijing as an adversary, reliance on such regimes may prove to be risky. Rosie Bircher joins us live from Brussels for more on this. Rosie, NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg, he's held a press conference after that meeting. What's his key message?
Well, I think top of ministers' agenda at this meeting, as they have been all year long, has been support to Ukraine. While we did hear messages of support to those other neighbourhood countries, including Bosnia and Herzegovina, but also Moldova and Georgia, messages of support there, the key message was that NATO will stand by Ukraine's side for as long as it takes. Stoltenberg and Secretary Blinken of the United States both announced that there will be more support headed to Ukraine, both in the form of weapons, something Ukraine has been calling out for, but also non-lethal aid. So after we've seen these attacks on Ukraine's energy infrastructure, NATO allies are stepping up to provide generators, ambulances, also transformers to try and repair and replace some of that broken energy infrastructure, of course, as the winter looms over Ukraine and temperatures drop below zero. Now, beyond this, Ukraine's foreign minister says that he is very grateful for what NATO allies have provided, but he says his key message is that this support must come faster and decisions must be taken more quickly when it comes to funneling that support into Ukraine. And he also pointed out, for example, production lines for arms production within the Western countries to get those arms then into Ukraine. Beyond this, NATO allies also looked at their relationship with China, and Secretary-General Stoltenberg said there are some lessons to be learned from the invasion of Ukraine. Take a listen.
We remain clear-eyed. Today, ministers considered China's ambitious military developments, its technological advances, and its growing cyber and hybrid activities. The war in Ukraine has demonstrated our dangerous dependency on Russian gas. This should also lead us to assess our dependencies on other authoritarian regimes, not least China.
Now, NATO Chief Stoltenberg is not advocating for any sort of decoupling with China. He said NATO allies will keep working with China, particularly on issues where cooperation is needed, for example, climate change. However, he has stressed in the past, his message has been that freedom is more important than free trade. And he, for example, has raised the issue of telecoms infrastructure, 5G networks across NATO allies. Now, this is all in follow-up to earlier this year at the NATO summit, when allies branded Beijing as a challenge to the alliance's security, to its values and to its interests. That's something that Beijing rejected, but certainly it was the first time we even saw China written into one of these blueprint documents for NATO's future orientations, for its actions and for its plans. So now they are very much looking more closely at Beijing, despite the fact that, say, Stoltenberg highlighted, this is a Euro-Atlantic alliance.
Rosie, thank you for that update. Rosie Bircher there in Brussels.